The United States launched a trade war against Canada.
Caused by a growing trade war with Canada.
The U.S. will add an additional 25% tariff.
For decades, Canada and the United States have shared one of the most intertwined energy relationships in the world. The U.S. has relied on Canadian oil as a stable, secure supply, while Canada has depended on the U.S. as its primary buyer. But now, something unexpected is happening. Canada, traditionally America's top energy partner, is making a bold move, shifting its oil exports away from the U.S. and towards Europe and Asia. For years, Canada's energy sector thrived on the stability of its U.S. trade relationship. The U.S. imported over 60% of its crude oil from Canada, and in return, Canadian oil producers benefited from reliable sales and steady demand. However, recent developments have signaled trouble. For a long time, Canada has been America's top energy supplier. Almost all of Canada's oil and gas went straight to the United States. But things are changing. Canada is now looking to sell its oil to Europe and Asia instead. But why? The biggest reason is new U.S. tariffs. Recently, the United States threatened to put extra taxes on Canadian oil and other products. This made Canada realize that depending too much on the U.S. could be risky. So, the Canadian government decided to look for new customers in other parts of the world. At the same time, Europe and Asia need more energy. Since the war in Ukraine, European countries want less energy from Russia. They are looking for stable and reliable suppliers, like Canada. Meanwhile, fast-growing economies like India and China need more oil and gas for their industries. Canada saw this as a perfect opportunity to sell energy to new markets and reduce its reliance on the U.S. Another big reason is new pipelines. Canada recently completed the Trans Mountain Pipeline Expansion, or TMX, which allows oil to be transported to the Pacific Ocean. This means Canada can now ship oil to Asia more easily. Plus, Canada is also developing LNG, or liquefied natural gas, export terminals, which will help send natural gas to Europe and Asia in the future. Simply put, Canada is changing its energy trade strategy to avoid risks with the U.S. and take advantage of new global opportunities. How will this affect the United States? The United States has always relied on Canada for its oil. In fact, more than half of the oil the U.S. imports comes from Canada. But now that Canada is looking to sell to Europe and Asia, what will happen to the U.S.? One major issue is higher prices. U.S. oil refineries, especially in the Midwest and Gulf Coast, depend on Canadian oil to produce gasoline and other fuels. If Canada sells more oil to other countries, the U.S. might have to buy oil from other suppliers, like OPEC or Middle Eastern countries, at higher prices. Another concern is energy security. The U.S. has always felt comfortable knowing that its closest neighbor supplies most of its energy needs. But now, with Canada looking elsewhere, the U.S. may need to rethink its energy strategy. Some American politicians are worried about losing influence over Canada. Right now, the U.S. and Canada work closely on trade and energy policies. But if Canada becomes more involved with Europe and Asia, it may start making decisions that don't always align with U.S. interests. However, some experts believe that the U.S. will adjust over time. The country produces a lot of its own oil and gas, and it has other trade partners. But there's no doubt that losing Canada as its main energy partner would be a big shift for the U.S. Now that Canada is looking beyond the U.S., who will benefit the most? Number 1. Europe. European countries have been struggling to find reliable energy sources ever since they started reducing imports from Russia. Canada, as a stable and friendly country, is seen as a great alternative. The Canada-EU Free Trade Agreement, or CETA, makes it even easier for energy exports to Europe. One challenge, however, is infrastructure. Canada doesn't have a major oil pipeline leading to its Atlantic coast, which makes exporting oil to Europe harder. But with new LNG, liquefied natural gas terminals being developed, Canada may soon ship more natural gas to Europe, helping the continent reduce its dependence on Russia. Number 2. Asia. Asian countries, including China, India, Japan, and South Korea, need huge amounts of energy to power their growing economies. Until now, Canada's oil was mostly stuck in North America. but with the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion, oil can now reach Asia through tankers. Some reports already show oil shipments from Canada heading to India and China. In the near future, Asia could become one of Canada's biggest energy customers. Canada will likely increase oil and gas exports to non-U.S. countries. The Trans Mountain Pipeline and LNG projects will help Canada send more energy to overseas markets. Within a few years, a significant percentage of Canada's oil may no longer be going to the U.S. By expanding its exports, Canada will compete with other big energy suppliers, including the U.S., OPEC, and Russia. This could change global oil prices and affect how countries buy and sell energy. The U.S. may not be happy with Canada shifting its focus to Europe and Asia. This could lead to trade tensions or even more tariffs. If the U.S. decides to impose stricter trade policies, Canada may have to strengthen its economic relationships with other countries. Canada is also focusing on renewable energy and climate-friendly technologies. Some experts believe that while oil and gas are still important now, Canada's future energy exports could shift toward hydrogen, nuclear, and renewable power. Canada's decision to diversify its energy exports is a major shift that will affect many countries. Here's what it means for the world. For the U.S., it means higher oil prices, less control over Canada's energy, and the need for new suppliers. For Europe, it means a more stable energy source that helps them reduce their dependence on Russia. For Asia, it means more options for importing oil and gas. For global energy markets, it means more competition and possible price changes. For Canada, it means a stronger and more independent economy with multiple trade partners. This shift could reshape the global energy trade, and Canada's role as an energy powerhouse will continue to grow beyond just North America. Canada's decision to reduce its reliance on the U.S. and focus on Europe and Asia is a smart move to protect itself from trade risks. With new pipelines and export routes, Canada now has the power to sell energy to more countries, giving it more influence in global energy markets. This shift won't happen overnight, but the world is already seeing the changes. Canada is becoming a global energy player, and its decisions will impact economies, trade, and politics for years to come. What do you think about Canada's big move? Let us know in the comments.